coming up to the surface with her now. Roger that.
Welcome to Hometown Happenings. I'm Carol McCarthy here with Becker County Sheriff Tim Gordon, and today Sheriff Gordon is going to show us behind the scenes and on the scene of the Becker County Dive Rescue. Sheriff Gordon, tell us a little bit about, maybe give us a little history of the Becker County Dive Rescue.
Well, you know, this goes back to even the 70s and 60s, where at one time it was a fire department based, and as their demands became more extreme, they focused on the fire. When I first came to the county, one of the reasons I was hired was as a diver, and since that time we've really evolved into a 501c3 all-volunteer organization that relies on community support and donations. So the diving you'll see today is all off the clock. Nobody's getting paid for it. Some of these people drove over 40 miles to be here for the practice today, but they're very committed.
Okay, and your divers now, how many divers are involved on your team?
Altogether we have 14. It's a small unit, it's a tight unit. We trust each other. We have 7 of us that no matter what or how extreme the conditions are, we can handle it. The team that you'll be seeing today have actually been out in 6 below at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning making a recovery. So regardless of the weather conditions or anything, our goal is to make a fast recovery and, if possible, a rescue. But off to my left here is a lot of experience. Art Backer's been on the team since probably 81, 82, somewhere in there. Next to him is Kevin Harrelson and his wife Judy. They're from that Two Inlets country in north, actually. And next to them is Pat Johnston. He's been diving for 15 to 20 years. And next to him is Sid Canham, who's also got a good 15 plus years in. So, you know, when we hit the water, there's a lot of experience here.
All right, so Sheriff Gordon, now that we've met some of the divers, you are going to show us a couple of different rescues today. Right,
we use, there's several different techniques. Today we're going to focus on 2 different ones. A lot of times we don't have the actual site of a victim drowning, and that's because people trying to be conscientious, they go out, they get the boat, they bring it back to shore, they don't mark where the person may have fell overboard or where somebody may have been swimming at the time of the drowning. So then we have to focus on targets. So what you're going to see is some of the specialized equipment we have, which is a side scan sonar, which is the latest technology, and it actually basically shows a digital photograph of the bottom as you're patrolling the water back and forth and controlling a grid. The next phase that you'll see is what's called a grid pattern, and that's where we'll take a large body of water and try to reduce it, say that's an unwitnessed drowning. We'll go out and we'll work it in quadrants, and with the GPS and the electronics that we have, we can actually cover pretty large areas of ground, make sure that all of that ground is covered and eliminate it and continue into a different area in the search pattern. And then the final one would be a spotted drowning, where we have either a target from the sonar, the side scan, or a witnessed drowning. That's a spot and jump, and it's in the water, make the retrieval and come back to the surface and begin CPR if possible.
Okay, now do you use one of these searches more than others, or in your experience?
Really, by the time, because this county is so big, the doctors with the mammalian diving reflex, which is where the body shuts down and actually preserves the brain longer than the 4 to 6 minutes. If it's cold water and we have a submersion, we've actually had a helicopter fly over us with a doctor on board for 90 minutes. So they will attempt resuscitation for 90 minutes after a drowning. So what you'll see is, more times than not, is the grid pattern, and that's the unwitnessed drownings, or where people are so confused because of the excitement and the adrenaline issues with the drowning that, you know, they really forget where they were at.
Okay.
So that grid pattern is the one you're going to see us use more times than not.
All right. Why don't you describe to us, okay, the first type of rescue, you said it involves sonar. So what do you actually do with that?
Okay, we grid it back and forth. It's called mowing the lawn, actually. It's just like if you were mowing your yard. You go back and forth until everything is covered. When we take a pattern and we'll go back and forth and work a zone, we have tracking on our GPS. At the same time, we're tracking with the GPS to make sure we're getting a good grid pattern and getting the bottom covered. We're also using a side scan sonar, which sends out a special signal and takes a digital picture of the bottom as we're going back and forth.
Okay.
Sid and Art are going to be doing the grid pattern, and that's once we get into the diving mode. Say we searched an area and we may not have had targets, or we may have so many targets like blowdowns and deadheads out there from fallen trees, etc. So we'll go to the grid pattern, and that's where you'll see two divers actually on a bar, so they keep the same distance, 12 feet apart. The lake we're on is known for 6 to 8 feet of visibility, so we know the divers can see in 6 feet and out 6 feet, so we're covering basically 24 feet of bottom at a time. And we'll continue that grid until that area is covered.
Mm-hmm. Now both Sid and Art have some experience diving, but what is the typical time that you would do that, that the divers would stay underwater?
Okay, most of our tanks, we've bumped it up, the equipment we use, and when you're underwater and actually being pulled, we try to keep it around 45 to 50 minutes with a 20-minute air reserve, just in case something happens. There's a lot of monofilament in these lakes, there's a lot of deadheads. In case something serious happens to a diver underwater, we still have that reserve air to work with.
Welcome back to Hometown Happenings. I'm here with Becker County Sheriff Tim Gordon. We're at Long Lake in Detroit Lakes today. And Sheriff Gordon, let's talk a little bit about some of the equipment you're using. It's a very equipment-intensive deal, this dive rescue. And I noticed that you have communication underneath the water. You have actually microphones and communication in the boat.
Oh, that's correct. With the technology that was developed 18 years ago, it really made it a lot safer. Before, we relied on rope tugs, and was that a tug or wasn't a tug? Was it a wave, wasn't a wave? Now we can, because of the demands placed on us, especially with ice or zero visibility, we've got full face masks which protect our face from any of the elements. Plus we have underneath the communications, which is a radio, no different than a CB radio, only designed for marine use. Divers can talk to the boat can talk to the divers can talk to each other. It's made it for a lot safer design for the divers out there.
I know that Judy was telling a story about how she was underneath doing a grid pattern search, and she was holding on, and at one point she said she got out of the water and her shoulders were black and blue, but that was something before communication, before the radio communication.
Yeah. We were working a drowning up on Elbow Lake, and it was extremely cold and it was windy that day, and the boat was being tossed around by the wind, and the divers were taking a beating, we were taking a beating. They actually came up bruised from the tugging and the jerking, and it was basically because the boat operator didn't know how fast he should be pulling us. So we'd be going extremely slow against the wind, but once the boat turned into the wind, we were really hauling, and it caused for some pretty tense moments underwater on that dive. And that was one of the reasons why we went to the communications, is those, like I said, regardless of the conditions, we'll be in the water.
Okay, and I notice, of course, being that it's scuba diving, you wear the wet suit, the dry suit, right, and the tanks, and any other kind of special gear that you have?
Well, most of our gear is basically commercial rated, because we are extreme diving at times, and recreational diving equipment is good, and it functions most of the year. However, we don't know when we're going to get called out, so we've taken the next step. The dive team each member is issued about $5,000 worth of gear, but each member has between $2,000 and $3,000 of their own equipment out there. So the BCs that float us, the regulators, and etc. It's all expensive. The computers lets us know how long we can stay down, how much air we're using, etc. That's all our own personal equipment. Okay,
and where does the funding for this dive rescue team come from?
Well, we are a United Way agency, but thanks to a lot of lake associations that we give talks to, and different service organizations, along with the United Way, they're the ones that actually fund us. We don't, if there's a drowning, we do not ask for a penny from the family for any of the work or the gasoline or anything. When we show up, the last thing we want a family worrying about is how much it's going to cost, because, like I said, as you see, there's a lot of equipment that comes with dive rescue, so that's not a concern. We don't care that we walk away from our jobs, or that we've invested the money in the equipment. And with United Way and the service organizations and lake associations, we're able to maintain our equipment pretty okay.
All right. Well, Sheriff Gordon, thank you so much for visiting with us and sharing about the Becker County Dive Rescue Team on Hometown Happenings.
Thank you, Carol.
And for Hometown Happenings TV3, I'm Carol McCarthy.